What's going on, everybody? It's me, Cameron Lawrence, welcoming you back to another Fantasy Football Fellows podcast episode. I'm flying solo again. We're talking Week 15 previews, getting ready for those playoffs. We got an exciting show, jam-packed with all the games going on this week. I'm excited to jump in and obviously a little saddened that my other co-hosts, Lucas and Tyler, are not able to join me tonight, but they are on their own valiant efforts of the day. So you get me, you're stuck with me, whether you like it or not. This is what you got. Again, this December 14th, Wednesday, when I'm recording, you'll have this December 15th on Thursday, hopefully in the morning if everything goes smoothly. Make sure that you're following us on Twitter at FFFellows, Instagram at the FFFellows, TikTok and YouTube, Fantasy Football Fellows. Subscribe and hit that bell down below. And make sure to join our Chalkboard, free. Got all of our weekly rankings, ton of league winners over there. But without further ado, let's jump right into the show. First, we're going to start with some news and notes brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. There are a lot of injuries this week. There are a lot of things that we need to be on our toes about. As fantasy managers, starts and sits matter more than ever right now because there is just some big names that went down this last week on Sunday. Deebo Samuel, he's expected to miss about 3 games, which could be the entire fantasy playoffs. Maybe he came back early, but probably not. So you're looking at the rest of the season without him. Fortunately for Deebo, it looked like it was going to be a lot worse of an injury. I don't know if you guys saw it, but right away I thought, man, Deebo just tore his ACL. Luckily, he did not. San Francisco is playing on Thursday against Seattle on the other side of the ball. Ken Walker is expected to play. That is big news if you need him back because he has looked really good. However, we'll get into it, but the San Francisco defense, run defense, has been playing really well. Not a sponsor yet. Lamar has not been practicing all week. He's expected to miss. We've been saying this whole time, probably going to miss 2 to 4 weeks. Huntley was limited in practice. He's still got a clear concussion protocol. If he can't, Anthony Brown will start. Brown did lead them in that game after Huntley went down. So not the worst option. Obviously, we'll get into that more, but J.K. Dobbins did have a pretty good game, even with those two playing. Finally, some good news in Vegas. Renfrow and Waller designated to return. I guess not great news if you're a Mac Hollins believer, but they should be back for the playoffs. For me, I'm very excited. I've been holding out hope for Waller to return all season. To get him back now would be huge if he can come back healthy. Justin Fields is battling an illness. He had the shoulder injury 2 weeks ago, then the bye. Now he's got an illness. He's considered day-to-day, didn't practice today, so that's just something to monitor. Also, McCole Hardman is activated from the IR. He could return. Same with Dallas Goedert. However, Cooper Kupp is expected to miss the rest of the season. That is something that we had told you guys. We figured from the beginning. It just didn't make sense for him to come back. If Stafford's out, he's still dealing with that. I'd be shocked, unbelievably shocked if he came back. Speaking of someone coming back, though, T.Y. Hilton going to the Dallas Cowboys really just shows you what I think just where Odell Beckham's at. If they're going T.Y. Hilton over top of Odell Beckham, he's got a lot of incentives built into his contract. He is, if you have a free roster spot, like I'm not dropping a handcuff. If you've got a free roster spot, why not just go add him? Maybe something crazy happens where he looks amazing. Last times we saw him, he just has looked miserable. So again, only if you have a free roster spot, like you lost Kyler Murray, but you already had another quarterback on your roster. Oh, free roster spot. Go get T.Y. Hilton. Russell Wilson is still in concussion protocol, something to monitor. And Amari Cooper has not been practicing. If you remember back to last week, he was battling a hip injury that showed up later in the week. That is something to monitor if he is held out this week. So again, news and notes brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper. And now let's dive in to some Week 15 matchups because remember, there are no buys this week. So we have a ton of Week 15 matchups. And first, on Thursday, the night when you are listening to this, Seattle versus the San Francisco 49ers. Seattle plus 3 This is a big game in terms of battling it out for the NFC West. Seattle just lost to the Panthers, so they need a redemption game here. And guys, I really hope you listened. I was pounding the table for you to pick CMC number 1. Obviously, he's running back 3. But guys, he's had back-to-back 28-plus point performances, and now he gets the worst rushing defense over the entire season. The worst rushing defense over the last 8 weeks. I shouldn't say over the entire season. I'm not 100% on that, but I do know over the last 8 weeks, they were the worst rushing defense. He gets to play them with no Deebo Samuel. He might put up 50 in this game. CMC is going to go off. You're also got to be looking at Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. Hopefully they can finally start getting something going. But man, I don't know what to think of George Kittle. I don't know if we can really bank. I mean, obviously if you have him, you're starting him, but it's really starting to get worrisome. Brandon Ayuk, I do think is going to be a good play this week. I think he's a top 20 wide receiver for sure. But on the other side of the ball, this has to be said. We need to understand this. Because I know we didn't think that Geno Smith was going to be amazing this year, but we are not giving enough credit for how good he's been to DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I'm not saying that they made Geno, and I'm not saying that they made Russ, but Geno's playing really well this year with them, and Russ is without them and not playing very well, and he's playing with 2 guys that were very highly touted at the beginning of the season, in Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Russ was the quarterback 3, quarterback 6, and then he was top 12 in points per game last season, even with an injury. Now, on the Broncos, he's quarterback 19, averaging less points per game than Marcus Mariota and Andy Dalton. On the other side, where DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are, Geno Smith is QB 6, leading the league in completion percentage, 6th in yards, and 4th in touchdowns. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are once again top 15 on the season, top 10 over the last 8 weeks. And they're doing exactly what we should have known they were going to do. Lockett is thriving on the deep pass. Shocker. And he's catching a ton of touchdowns. Well, DK has developed into a more complete wide receiver. He is the safety blanket. If they need a third down, he throws it to DK. Touchdowns are only going to go up from here. Yardage is only going to go up from here for DK. These two are completely underrated, tossed to the side, and they have proved just how valuable of a duo they are in NFL-wise and fantasy-wise. Sorry, I needed that rant because we need to realize just how good these two have been. Tyler Lockett, 2 top 8 finishes in the last 3 years, 4 top 15 finishes in the last 4 years, 5 top 20 finishes in the last 5 years, and we're still going to be drafting him in the 7th round. He is reaching Brandon Cook's territory of how disrespected he is getting. Right? Geno Smith is going to be good again next year. DK is going to be good again next year. And Tyler Lockett, he's going to be 31, but he's still going to find a way to do it because that's who Tyler Lockett is. And this one, I'm still going to take the 49ers. I think this defense is just going to overwhelm them enough to keep them a little bit off balance. I do think Tyler Lockett and DK have great weeks. I do, because the San Francisco defense struggles, if anywhere, against the pass. I shouldn't say struggles, but they're not as great against the pass. You can't really run on them. So while Kenneth Walker is back, I'm not expecting a huge game from him. Just, limited receiving work. He needs to find the end zone, which he might. But I do think that the 49ers figure out a way to win this game. They are at home, I believe. Yep. Next, we have on Saturday, our Minnesota Vikings coming off another disappointing game against the Detroit Lions, playing the Indianapolis Colts. Vikings favored by -4. If you have Jonathan Taylor, you should be so extremely happy. You've been waiting and waiting and waiting for it to pay off, and it's finally here. He finally has a game when it matters where it's going to completely pay off. You're going to forget everything that's happened if you made the playoffs. Obviously, there are a lot of Jonathan Taylor managers who did not make the playoffs, but if you did, here's your time to be rewarded. This Vikings defense has been rough against the pass. Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, this is your week. Paris Campbell, this is your week. I would be feeling more confident than I have all season to start Michael Pittman. If you're needing a flex, I would look Paris Campbell's way. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is a lock. I'm not trusting Matt Ryan, though. Even if they have a great game, I don't have that enough faith in Matt Ryan. On the other side of the ball, Indianapolis has actually been really good against the pass this season. But I don't think you're stopping Justin Jefferson right now, right? He's been hearing people like last week. They were saying, "Oh, Detroit locked him up." He takes it personally, and then he torches you. Adam Thielen, I probably wouldn't play. Jefferson, obviously, you're still starting. And Dalvin Cook, you got to continue to start. Kirk is an interesting one in this one, right? He's been that borderline streamer. If we're looking at these games, right, I mean, I'd rather, like, if I have Deshaun Watson, for sure, I'm going to start Deshaun Watson over him. Like a Tua, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts. These are just guys you're obviously starting over him. But I would lean against it just slightly if I could. However, right, I mean, he is that borderline. Like Trevor Lawrence or Kirk Cousins would be a great one that you would have to decide between because, right, Trevor Lawrence gets the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm probably going to take Kirk. I don't love Kirk there, but, right, we're looking at matchups matter in the playoffs. Moving on, we have the Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore Ravens, right? We talked about it earlier. Ravens are without Lamar more than likely, 95% chance they're without Lamar. Tyler Huntley still has to clear concussion protocol, so they could be with Anthony Brown. Cleveland on the other side, they could be without Amari Cooper. Ravens could also be without Demarcus Robinson, who isn't practicing. Right, this could be just a rough game to watch on a Saturday because Vikings, Colts, Cleveland Ravens, and Bills, Dolphins are all on Saturday. This could be a rough one, but I do like Nick Chubb. I think he finally gets his bounce back game, right? 2 games, under 9 points. If Amari Cooper's not practicing all week, I don't feel very confident in starting Amari Cooper. However, I do think that if he does play, if he comes back on Thursday, he practices Friday, I'd feel confident starting Deshaun Watson in this one. On the Baltimore side, obviously you got to start Murray Andrews. You don't have anyone else. J.K. Dobbins, I do like in this one. If you watched him last week, we talked about in the last episode, he didn't look physically great, but was still good for fantasy. And I think he keeps that up. He's got just enough burst where when they open the holes for him on that offensive line, he can find them. He's got good vision. He can get there. He's not going to break away any runs. I hope that knee continues to heal because he can be a special player, especially in this offense. Next up, we have Bills versus the Dolphins. Man, I'm going to be honest. I think Josh Allen really has his revenge game, right? And because if you remember their last game, they had him on the last drive, on the last play. He had his man, I think it was Isaiah McKenzie, wide open in the end zone, and he bounced it to him. It was a 20-yard pass across the field, and he maybe threw it 10 yards. Right? So I think that he's gonna bounce back in this one. I would love to. What am I trying to say? I love, all the main guys in this one. Running back wise, if Jeff Wilson misses, right, you should be looking Raheem Mostert. Bills have been decent against the run, but if it's just Raheem Mostert in the backfield, I do like him. I think he could be a good flex play. I'm going to stay away from Isaiah McKenzie. I'm not going to fight that. Gabe Davis, I'm more than likely going to stay away from, right? He hasn't been consistent at all. We're getting into the playoffs. I mean, if you really are in desperation mode and you're like, man, I have no shot. I need a 40-point piece. Maybe you throw out Gabe Davis, but I'm going to be staying away from Davis in this one, especially knowing that there are no buys. All teams are playing, right? So I'm going to stay away from Davis in this one. I do think Bills win. I don't think 7.5 feels very high for this one, but I do think the Bills win it. Next, we have the Chicago Bears versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this one's fun just from the aspect of thinking of Fields versus Hurts. Right? We're thinking of 2 guys now, 2 running quarterbacks who Hurts was in Fields' shoes last season, right? People were saying, oh, Hurts is going to be cut. I was saying, that I was looking back. It felt like the Eagles made a trade to get into the first round this year. in case Hurts didn't work out, in case, hey, we need to draft a quarterback in the first round next year, we can. Well, Hurts has worked out. Hurts has improved a ton, right? I think when we thought of Tua, right, Tua has definitely improved, but we thought Tua, or people were hoping Tua would take the same jump that Jalen Hurts has. Nobody expected Jalen Hurts to take the jump he has. I know we add in A.J. Brown. This O-line's great. But Jalen Hurts is making throws. Jalen Hurts is winning ball games. Jalen Hurts has looked really, really, really good from both an NFL perspective and obviously from a fantasy perspective being the QB1. The interesting part for Philly in this game is Dallas Goedert is back. Now, I don't think this affects A.J. Brown, but Devonta Smith has been playing really well as of late. This worries me a little bit about Devonta Smith and targets, right? He's been seeing 8-9 targets every single game since Dallas Goedert has missed. He had one game where he didn't. Every other game in the last 6, he has seen 8 or 9 targets. Now Dallas Goedert is back. How does that affect his target share? I would still be okay starting Devonta Smith, knowing how bad this Bears defense is, and knowing that Justin Fields keeps them in games and puts up points. So as long as Fields is playing, I would still start Devonta Smith, but you need to have that. You need to know and have that expectation that, hey, he might not get me 10 plus points in this one, or not 10, 15 plus points in this one. It might be a 10-point week. It might be 5 for 50. And you have to be okay with that. On the other side, sorry, I got to get something in me. On the other side, we're looking at Justin Fields and David Montgomery, and that's it. Darnell Mooney, I think he's out. If I remember right, is he on the IR? I don't have a producer. I wish I did. He could tell me that. And I you don't want anyone else on that team. Cole Kmet, I guess you could start. Why not? The shot in the dark, he's worked out. I'd put him in my top 12 tight ends this week. But yeah, I think Philly does beat up on him. Miles Sanders, of course, you're starting. He's looked really, really good. Last season, we didn't love Miles Sanders, right? Last season, the O-line wasn't as good. Last season, just Jalen Hurts wasn't moving the ball down the field quite as much. They weren't getting in the red zone as much last season. This season, they're in the red zone a lot more, right? Jalen Hurts is still taking touchdowns, but they're in the red zone enough where Miles Sanders is still getting his. They're up enough now where they're running with consistency, giving Miles Sanders those touches that he needs to be successful. And obviously in an offense like this, as this dynamic with the rushing quarterback, holes open up more. We see that in Baltimore as well. So Miles Sanders is a must start, I think, for probably the rest of the season. Woo. Next game, New Orleans Saints versus the Atlanta Falcons. Desmond Ritter's first game. Marcus Mariota stepped away from the team to get off-season knee surgery. It is all him, handing in the keys, him and Drake London. Oh, I just feel like this could be just a big crash and burn for the Atlanta Falcons in this one. I would not be starting Drake London. I wouldn't be starting any Falcon. Even Cordell Patterson, I'd be staying away from in this one. On the Saints side of the ball, Chris Olave. I would start Chris Olave. Kamara, you got to start Kamara, right? This could be the game where he bounces back. I understand he has been disappointing, right? We thought that he'd have already started to come back. His last week, obviously with the bye, or 2 weeks ago, last week he had the bye. But he is disappointing all season long. Hopefully he gets it going. Hopefully right now you're winning the championship with him. But I do understand that a lot of you who did have Alvin Kamara probably aren't winning championships, or probably aren't in the playoffs, I should say. Next up, we have the New York Jets versus the Detroit Lions. I know we mentioned it last week, but that hit on Mike White, I don't know how he's still alive. I've just watched it multiple times now, and the dude literally was folded like a lawn chair. That might be the hardest hit on a quarterback I've ever seen without a flag. And yet they're saying he might play this week. The dude got some dog in him. Garrett Wilson, you're firing up. Amon-Ra, you're still firing up, even with the matchup against the Jets, right? Justin Jefferson showed, you can still be productive against the Jets. There's still ways to get open, and he's another guy like a Jefferson where they move around the field a ton. He's not just running up the sideline. He'll play in the slot. He'll move all over. I think he'll be fine. What's interesting for the Lions and I guess the Jets is the running back situation. Can you trust DeAndre Swift in this one? I'm going to. Can you trust Jamal Williams? I'm going to stay away in this one. Other side, Michael Carter, Zonovan Knight. I'm going to trust Zonovan Knight as a low-end flex play. Let me be clear on that, right? I'm taking Swift over Zonovan Knight. We talked about the last game, Chris Olave or Zonovan Knight. I'm taking Chris Olave, but if you're like Drake London or Zonovan Knight, I'm going to take Zonovan Knight. Next up, we got the Panthers versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Panthers actually favored in this one, which is crazy to me, but it does also make sense coming off another victory over the Seattle Seahawks. They're a game back of Tampa Bay right now. Could you imagine they trade away everyone and this team makes the playoffs? It would be unbelievable with Sam Darnold. And I think Sam Darnold continues to cook. I think Deontay Foreman is still in charge of this. I know Chuba Hubbard, however you say it, had the better fantasy game. But if you look attempts-wise, it was Foreman at 21 attempts, Hubbard at 14. It was still Deontay Foreman's backfield, even though he was less productive. I think he retains that spot. I think he's still the starter moving forward. So yeah, I would keep watching that. I would keep pounding on Deontay Foreman. DJ Moore. I hate this. I hate this with everything in me. I hate answering questions on DJ Moore because he's so dang talented. And we've seen him and Sam Darnold connect before. But man, is that tough. I would start him over Amari Cooper. I'll put it that way. I would start him over Amari Cooper in this one. Pittsburgh Steelers side of the ball. Whew. There are other wide receivers. I would start DJ Moore over both Pittsburgh wide receivers. I would go Pickens, then Deontay. Carolina's actually had a sneaky good defense this year. They have. And so I don't know. Kenny Pickett was obviously knocked out of the game last game with a concussion. Mitch Trubisky, I don't know if he leads them against this team. Pretty crazy to think it's Sam Darnold versus Mitch Trubisky could be the game. But yeah, Najee, I guess you can start if you have to. I'd start him over like a Zonovan Knight. I'd start him over Deontay Foreman too, probably. But, I'm not excited about it. Next up, we have Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Dallas Cowboys. We said it last episode. Travis Etienne is not this league winner that people were saying 6 weeks ago, right? He's not this top 10 running back all of a sudden. We're not selling the farm for him. He's playing Dallas. Dallas shuts teams down. Obviously, they didn't do it against Houston last week. But do you really think the way that they've been playing that they're going to come back and have another letdown game? No. Dallas is going to shut down Etienne. I do still like Trevor Lawrence. If you're in like a super flex league, I'm not actively starting him this week. I know he's been playing really well, but I don't love the matchup. I would start Christian Kirk, however. Christian Kirk's a slot wide receiver. Christian Kirk will not be locked up by Trevon Diggs the whole game. Christian Kirk's going to get his on the other side. CD Lamb, obvious start. Zeke and Tony Pollard, both top 12 plays in this one. Again. T.Y. Hilton, obviously, if you picked him up, like I said, he is just, if you have a free bench spot, you're not doing anything unless, hey, we see 20 points from him this week. They're telling us that he's going to be more involved, that he's going to get 85% of snaps. That'd be the only reason. That's not going to happen, but you could have him as that free bench spot on your bench or free last roster spot. Dak, I would definitely be starting Dak. He's probably a top 10 quarterback on the week. Looking next, we got Houston Texans versus Kansas City Chiefs. I would be so disappointed if I had Patrick Mahomes in this one. I would. Right? You're looking, beginning of the season, you see, I got Patrick Mahomes. First week of the fantasy playoffs. Circle that. All excited. Then you get to here and you think about it. Patrick Mahomes might only play 2 quarters. I need him to throw 3 touchdowns right away. If he doesn't throw 3 touchdowns right away, he's going to end up with 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's it. right? Still a good game, right? 16 fantasy points. But if you see Mahomes against the Texans, you're thinking 30 fantasy points, right? 400 yards, 4 touchdowns. That's not going to happen because they're going to get up by so much. Obviously, we said this last week with the Cowboys, but it's not going to happen 2 weeks in a row, especially not with Kansas City, not with Andy Reid. They're going to get in, they're going to score theirs, they're going to get out. This could be the Travis Kelce, redemption game, right? If he gets 60 yards, oh, wow, that was almost really bad. 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. He's up at 18 points. I think that's something very attainable for Travis Kelce. I would start Juju in this one, as long as he's playing. And on the other side of the ball, I guess you could go back to Dameon Pierce, right? Chiefs have been decent on the ground. They're not going to run the ball a ton in this one. But I don't know why I'm using Zonovan Knight a ton, but I would start Dameon Pierce over Zonovan Knight. Next up, we have Denver Broncos versus Arizona Cardinals. This could be a really, really disgustingly gross game if Russell Wilson does not play, because you get Colt McCoy versus Blake Ripken, I think. I don't know. That can't be right. Ripon, something like that. Don't have it written in my notes, and I don't know off the top of my head. Cortland Sutton has not been practicing. Cortland Sutton might miss another game. If there's no Russ, there's no way I'm starting either running back. I don't think I'm going to start any Bronco. Maybe I start Greg Dulcich if I need a tight end. Like if he's the only one on my roster, I'd start him. If Russ plays, then yeah, I'd go back out. I'd try to catch lightning in the bottle twice with Jerry Jeudy, especially if Sutton's out. If Sutton does play, right, they're both real low end flex plays if Russ is in. On the Arizona side of the ball, you still got to start D-Hop. I would still start Marquise Brown. James Conner, you're still starting, right? This Denver defense is good, but those players score the ball, right? James Conner scores touchdowns. Marquise Brown can stretch the field, and D-Hop is always going to get his. So I'd still be confident in those three. Next up, we have Vegas versus the Patriots. I said this at the beginning of the episode, right? We have Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow are both being activated again. If you have Mac Hollins, I'm sorry. I don't think he's going to be relevant anymore. I don't even know how great Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller are going to be right now. We don't know what the game plan is going to look like. Only thing we're certain of is Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams are going to get theirs. There's no way they take the ball out of Devontae Adams' hands, especially if at the end of the season, they're going to have to convince him to stay in Las Vegas. They're going to feed him the ball. Josh Jacobs, they're going to continue to get his because that is the only way they can win ball games right now. On the other side of the ball, Ramondre Stevenson, that's it. Game over. Don't talk about anyone else on the New England Patriots. And to be fair, Ramondre and Damian Harris missed the game before it started, right? He was out before the game started. Ramondre got hurt last week, ankle injury, tried to come back, got out or left the game again. He might not play this week. Kevin, if it's Kevin Harris, if it's Pierre Strong, I'm not touching it. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't care how bad this Vegas Raiders defense is. Actually, I take that back. If you're in need of a play, right? If you're like, gosh, I just lost Devo. I just lost, you have nobody left. Then yeah, he could be a desperation. This run defense is really bad. Hopefully the Patriots score a touchdown kind of a play, but that's about it. Next up, we have Chargers versus the Titans. Another game, kind of like just Jonathan Taylor with the Vikings. If you have Justin Herbert, you've been all year, Herbert, you're driving me nuts. This is the game that he could explode on. Tennessee is allowing the most points to the wide receiver position in all of fantasy, which means they're allowing a lot of points to the quarterback position as well. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, both healthy. We saw that in the Dolphins game last week. Justin Herbert could light it up, right? Justin Herbert could look unbelievably good in this one. We could be seeing 300 yards. We could be seeing 4 touchdowns. We could be seeing both Mike Will and Keenan Allen as top 12 options on the week. Obviously, you start Austin Eckler as well. On the other side of the ball, Chargers can't defend the run. Oh, you know who Tennessee Titans have? Derrick Henry. We said it earlier in the couple weeks ago. Derrick Henry might just hand you a championship himself. He gets the Chargers, then 2 out of the next 3 weeks, he gets AFC opponents. Yes, he has Dallas in there, but it's still Derrick Henry. He might just hand you a championship. I would not touch anybody else on this Titans team. Maybe I'll give you Chig. I don't even know how to say his whole name. Jacob Kwanku, is that what it is? I'm not even going to try. He could be another play that you have in there. Tampa Bay versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincy obviously favored this one. They've been on fire as of late. Tampa Bay has looked like they don't know what's going on. Jamar Chase, fire him up. T. Higgins, what happened last week? Lost people weeks because they're like, oh, I'm going to start him. They said he's fine. He plays like 4 plays and is done. Are you kidding me? Jamar Chase could toast the secondary, though, because they are not healthy. Cincinnati's defense has been on fire. I would be worried if I had Mike Evans right now. Chris Godwin, you're still starting, right? Chris Godwin has looked good. He's played good. Even when Brady's been off, him and Godwin he's been targeting Godwin a ton. Brady and Kirk Cousins, that's an interesting one this week. Who do you trust more? For me, right now, I'm taking Kirk Cousins over Tom Brady. And I don't think that should be, I genuinely don't think that should be close. Cincinnati is the defense that's on fire right now, right? Indianapolis played well against the pass, but Cincinnati's on fire. Both quarterbacks haven't looked great in their past couple of games, but it's Justin Jefferson versus Chris Godwin. I understand Chris Godwin's a great wide receiver in his own right, but Justin Jefferson takes the cake by far. So yeah, I'm gonna lean Kirk Cousins in this one. Next up, we have a very important divisional matchup in the Washington Commanders versus the New York Giants. These teams are fighting for the wild card right now. Both, I think they have the same record. Huge game. Commanders have had their defense kind of come back to life a little bit. We remember 2 years ago, they looked awesome. Last year, we're like, Commanders are going to have a top 5 defense, and they were abysmal. They're finally starting to come back together and figure it out. Been good against the run. Carson Wentz was activated. I still think they're going to lean Taylor Heineke. Obviously, something to watch for the next couple weeks. Carson Wentz favored Curtis Samuel. Taylor Heineke is favored Terry McLaurin. You're starting Terry McLaurin in this one. On the ground, I would start if Brian Robinson is dealing with a quad issue, so something to watch. If he plays, I'd start Brian Robinson. And I think Antonio Gibson could also be a flex option in this one. On the other side, obviously, Saquon, you're starting. No one else. And that's the way that the Giants have been all season long. And finally, the Monday night game we were all waiting for with playoff aspirations on the line. Well, not exactly. Green Bay versus the Los Angeles Rams. Green Bay favored by 7 points. Can Baker and Mayfield do it again? I wouldn't count on it. All right, Green Bay's backs are against the walls. They need to win if they want a chance at the playoffs. And yeah, I just don't think Baker does it a second week in a row. The Los Angeles backfield, I'm going to stay away from. Cam Akers fumbled in this last one. We thought it was going to be his backfield. Maybe it's Kyron's backfield, and then all of a sudden Malcolm Brown's in there. It's gross. I'm not going to try and pick a receiver either. On the Green Bay side, I'd start Christian Watson. I would start Aaron Jones, Allen Lazard, A.J. Dillon. They could be more of desperation flex plays. Lazard's still getting snaps. He's still out there. He would need a touchdown in this one. I don't know if I want to bank on that right now. A.J. Dillon's had one good game all season. Are we really, I guess, first one in a long time. Are we really going to try and chase that? I wouldn't in the first week of the playoffs. Whew. Well, with that wraps up the entirety of our fantasy football analysis of this week's games. Guys, I really hope that as you move forward with this week that you realize it is completely out of your hands. Right? You made it to the playoffs. You made the trades. You're watching the waiver wire. Nothing you can do now is going to change anything. You set your lineup. You hope for the best. Maybe you get a fluky win. Hopefully you don't get a fluky loss. Best of luck to everybody. Keep following along with the fellas. Keep following along. Coming January 1st, we got some big news coming up. Make sure you're following us, FF Fellas, on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube. All right, with that, keep on keeping on, and deuces.